Hello, my lovely Twin Towers engineers. Today we're going to be talking about how to log into our tinkercad accounts using our Google email that we've been using for everything all year long. It's a pretty simple process, and it's going to start by going onto our Google Classrooms. In this video, we're going to go over how to log in, how to do the first 7 basic tinkercad lessons to learn how to move objects, rotate them, align them, copy them, and a few other things. So the first thing we're going to want to do is go to our classroom and find the slides for the Introduction to Tinkercad Day. These slides are going to contain all the links to our Tinkercad classrooms. If you're a student from the future, and we've done a lot since then, you might have to scroll down or search. Control F to search for Tinkercad, and then you can find it. It's going to be these slides, and these slides are going to have the codes to join our Google Classroom, our Tinkercad classroom. So let's say I wanted to join my Period 1 Tinkercad class. I could hop into the slides. Actually, I'll join Period 6. And I'm going to click the link to join my Tinkercad classroom. So Period 1 students, click Period 1 link, Period 2, Period 2, Period 3 students, pick Period 3 link, etc., etc. While we're going through these Tinkercad lessons, I might go a little fast at times. Feel free to watch things again, slow it down, watch it over. But yeah. So I'm going to click on my Tinkercad link to get into my Tinkercad classroom, and it's going to ask me for a nickname. But I don't like logging in with the nicknames. I don't think the nickname system works very well. I don't like it. It's confusing. It slows down the class. I like signing in with Google. I like clicking a big button that says sign in with Google and just being logged in and everything being done for me. So I'm going to click sign in first. And then I'm going to click sign in with Google. Nice. That's going to put me into my Tinkercad. That's going to put me into Tinkercad after I select my account, and I'm going to be ready to go. Or am I? So I'm in Tinkercad. Everything looks good. But unfortunately, I'm actually not ready to go, because what I need to do is I need to exit this, go back to the link, and click it a second time. And that is the truthful thing that you actually have to do. So now it's asking me, welcome to Pre-Engineering 6. It'll say your name here. It'll show you a profile picture that if you have one. And you just say, that's me. And now you're good to go. So now we're good to start working. I could see all the work you do on your account. I could see whatever you do now that you've gotten through that screen. So for the first class we're doing on Tinkercad, for the basics, we want to click this Learn button at the top. And we want to start with Starters. These are the first, most basic lessons in Tinkercad. And make sure your tab is set to 3D. I don't want you guys accidentally working in circuits or code. I think you would notice pretty quick if you were working on circuitry instead of 3D modeling. You'd be like, this doesn't look right. But we're going to be doing 3D modeling. So we're going to start with Place It. So Place It is our first lesson, and it's about how to take objects and put them into our workspace so that we can, start 3D modeling with them. So I'm going to need my camera to be out of the way somewhere. Alrighty, this is not out of the way enough. All right, it'll be down here. So our shapes, so Place It wants us to place objects from this sidebar onto this workspace. So I already finished this lesson. I'm going to hit reset to go back to the beginning. And it's going to ask me to place an object onto the workspace. So specifically, it wants a box. So I'm going to grab this box. I'm going to click and drag it onto the workspace. And that is our first 3D model. That is our first 3D model. We could print this right now if we wanted to. Have a nice little box. There's not just boxes. There's tons of shape. There's spheres, triangles. There's this text one. Pyramids. And you could build you can grab all kinds of shapes out of here. So again, I'm just dragging out wedges, And all you're doing, if you want one of these shapes on the side, you just take it. You just take whatever you want. So that's it for the first lesson. All you have to do is just drag that block out. Our second lesson for this first little tinkercad section is going to be camera controls. So there's a few ways to control the cameras. I'm on Chromebook, so my ways are going to be the same as yours right now. We can grab this block and drag it around. That'll rotate our workspace around the same way we drag this block. We can click on surfaces of this block to line our cameras up with those surfaces. So maybe I could rotate the block, and maybe I want to see from the right side. I can click the right side. You can click the corners to see from the corner angle. You can click surfaces on this cube to rotate them to rotate your workspace to specific angles. I can hold both my fingers on my mouse to zoom in. I could slide my fingers apart to zoom in. I could push my fingers together to zoom out. I could click this button on the side, fit all in view, and that'll give me a pretty good view of whatever I'm working with. I could hold shift and click. I can hold shift and double click and slide. So this is a lot of fingers on my keyboard right now. I have, a whole thing going on this trackpad. But double click, shift, and slide lets us slide around our workspace. So that could be useful. And there's one more way to rotate. I think it's, how else do we rotate? It's double click and slide by itself. Also lets us rotate. So we could double click and slide to rotate. This lesson was just about camera controls. That's it for that lesson. We're going to click continue to move to our next lesson. These are all lessons that you guys have to complete. Click continue on, and these are going to be your grade for the first tinkercad class. The next lesson is move it. I've already completed it, so this is what a finished move it assignment looks like. Also, all of these lessons have written instructions on the side. So if I reset it so it'll go back to how it'll look like for you when you first load it in. Oh no. So when we have our thing loaded in, all we're doing for move it is you click on a shape and you drag it around, and it'll drag it wherever you want on your workspace. I have 2 cubes here by accident, so I have to do this twice to move both cubes around, but it doesn't really matter. The point of this is to get used to moving things around. So I'm just moving my shapes around. You can click and drag them to move them wherever you want. Another important movement is this arrow on top. Maybe it looks like a little teardrop to some people. You can click that and drag it up to move a shape up, or drag it down to move a shape down. That's how you move things vertically, up and down. That's it for movement. Very simple concept. It's not a perfect assignment, but it's good enough. The next tool we want to use is rotate. Rotate allows us to rotate our objects on 3 separate axes, 3 separate planes. Those are kind of high-level words. You don't have to know exactly what they mean, but you do have to understand that we have to rotate, that we can rotate any object in 3 different directions. So once this loads, I will show you guys that. All right, so we can grab these cubes, and whenever we click on them, we're going to have these arrows come up. There's going to be one on the top, one on the bottom, and at this view we don't have it, but if we rotate the camera by double clicking and sliding, we'll see that there's another arrow on the side to rotate our object. So we can rotate it like that. So we want to rotate our cubes so that they fit into these orange spots. So for this first one, I'm going to click and drag the rotation tool on the bottom, and I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. For this one, I'm going to use the rotation tool on top. I'm going to click and drag and rotate it 45 degrees, unless it's being difficult. I'm going to click. Okay, so that's fine. That brings us into a new thing we can learn. So this one's being a little difficult with me. It's not letting me click and drag it to rotate it for some reason, but I can manually click this space and type in whatever rotation I want. And I know it's 45 degrees because 45 is half of 90. 90 would be the exact same what we were just working with. So it has to be halfway between those two spots. So look, so to show you what I mean, if I set this angle to 90, we'd be back where we started with because it's a cube. But if I do half of 90, I get it halfway. I get this corner to this corner is a 90-degree turn. This corner to halfway there is a 45-degree turn. Usually when we do a lot of our rotations are going to be 90 or 45 degrees. And those are my rotated cubes. Yours might not look exactly like this. Again, I have 2 stacks of cubes there because my game is slightly broken. And that's it for rotation. This lesson's resizing. I'm not going to reset it back to their originals because it takes a second. But I can click these. I can resize them up and down. I can grab this little square on the top to resize them up and down. I can grab this square on the sides to resize it out this side. I can grab this square on the side to resize it out that side. And I can even resize it negatively. I can resize it all the way down that way. I could resize the corners to resize it in 2 sides at once. And that's about it for resizing. I could also type out specific sizes that I want to make sure, let's say I wanted multiple sides to be the exact same size. I could do that to make sure I have a square. And I can do this to make sure I have a cube. Now all the sides are the exact same. And that's it. You just grab these squares and you pull them whichever way you want to resize your shapes. You can make them bigger, smaller, however you want. That's basically it for resizing. And the last lesson is aligning. Aligning is its own little tool, and it is exceptionally useful for a number of reasons. And for some reason, the student's grade didn't update. So aligning, this is holes. Before we get into aligning, we get into holes and grouping. These are really important concepts. Grouping is taking 2 items that are separate, 2 separate objects, maybe a circle and a sphere, or in this case, a cube and a cylinder. And we're going to take those 2 separate objects and we're going to group them into one object. So an important thing to make note of is that in tinkercad, one object can only have one color. So right now we have this cylinder inside of this cube. And if I zoom in on it and maybe rotate around so that I get my camera in there, we could see that this cylinder is actually inside of this cube. When we go inside this cube, we see that the cylinder is in here. These are 2 separate objects that are just like on top of each other. But once we grab them, so let me rotate my camera. So the way I like selecting them is I make a box like this, and I click and drag to make a box around the objects I want to group. And once we select them, we can click this group button. And now we don't have a cylinder inside a cube. We have one continuous shape, which is a cube with like a cylinder piece coming out of the top. But this is all one shape now. So that lets us group to combine shapes. I'm going to grab this cube. I think it's the easiest way to rotate, actually. Another really useful use for grouping is we don't just combine shapes. We could also subtract from shapes. We can remove one shape from another one. For example, this is the same situation, But instead of being a solid, this cylinder is marked as a hole, meaning when we group it, instead of grouping together to be one shape, they group together to still be one shape, but the hole doesn't become part of that shape. It becomes a missing spot. It becomes a hole. Big surprise. So let's say I was to take this one and make it into a hole, and then like kind of put these on top of each other some way. If I was to group these, what do you guys think would happen? What do you guys think is going to happen here? Well, since this one is a hole and this one is a shape, when we group them together, anything from the hole is subtracted from the shape. So now instead of having shape there, we have hole. Very complicated. But yeah, just make sure you know that where this button is to turn a shape into a hole, you just select it and it's this big hole button right here. Very important concept. Our final concept, and I didn't do that lesson exactly correct, but hopefully you guys could follow the instructions and hand this in correctly. Lesson completed, continue. Alrighty, so finally we have align it. So align it starts with a bunch of boxes kind of spread out from each other. And what we're supposed to do in the align it lesson, and I have a few more shapes here because I was making pizzas with one of my classes, but what we're supposed to do with the align it lesson is line up all of our boxes in some way. So as you can see, this stuff is all randomly scattered all over the place. But if I click this align tool, I could click these circles, these dots, to have all of my objects that I have selected lined up at that dot. So for example, I'll click this dot here, and now all of my objects are in line with where that dot was. I can click this dot here in the middle and move all my objects to be in line with that dot. I can click this dot here and have all my objects be in line with where this dot is. So I can align things in different ways. And if I do one more alignment, I think I can have everything stacked up on top of each other. So let me use the align tool. Let me let me click this button to fit all. And if I click this, now I have one jumbled mess because I've aligned everything so much that it's so aligned that it's all on top of each other. And that's it for this lesson. So hopefully everyone's able to play with some of these tools, complete the instructions in the lesson, and do the things that the lesson tells you to do. If anyone has any questions, please email me, and I'll post this right now and get it up to you guys so that you guys have it.